All rise for the Honorable Judge Saz.
You may be objection overruled, sustained. What are you? That's not even. He needs to be escorted out of my court now. Wait. Here's my bar card. He can stay. Hello, I'm Sazarabi, attorney at law. And I'm here for the trial of the century, the PEOPLE vs LUCHI GONZALEZ. My client has received slander and... Okay, honestly, just a few comments that bugged me throughout the season, so let's see what's shaking. The claims made were pretty much that Luchi Gonzalez wasn't a good coach. So I want to start us at the beginning of last season, prior to Luchi. In 2022, the Quakes were the third worst team in the league and dead last in the Western Conference. They had conceded the second most goals in the league, and the most in the conference was 69 goals allowed. This is compared to the conference average of 50.29, the low being LAFC with 38 and the high being us with 69. Not to mention, JT was also the league leader in saves that season. San Jose did have some coaching problems, but that's something I'll return to later. While a negative of that season was goals, a positive of that season was goals. While San Jose was leaking goals left and right, they were also scoring a ton of goals, mostly from two familiar faces to Quakes fans, Jeremy Ebobisse and Christian Espinoza. Both finished fourth in either goals or assists for the league that season. The Quakes finished with 52 goals for that season. That only leaves 5 teams in the whole conference equaling or surpassing that total. The conference average was 50.21, with the high being LAFC with 66 goals and the low being Vancouver Whitecaps with 40. So if you're Luchi Gonzalez, you're looking at this team, and might I add, while he's at the World Cup for the US men's national team as an assistant coach, you're looking at this team and being like, wow, they can do the hardest thing in the game, and that is just score goals. They also have a serious problem with leaking, or in our case, drowning and conceding goals. If you saw the team you were about to work with had a serious problem with leaking goals but was really good at scoring them, the logical thing to do would be shore up the defense. And that's what Luchi did before the season even started. With the help of super underrated GM Chris Leach, the Earthquakes acquired CDM Carlos Carrizo, former player of Luchi Gonzalez, aka someone he knows he can work with, and former MLS champ and captain Jonathan Mensah for center back. Luchi's system was deemed timid, and yes, while the goals for category did drop from 52 goals for us to 39, a 25% decrease, the whole conference dropped to 46.93%, which is about a 7% decrease. But that happens from season to season. There's gonna be fluctuations, especially in a season when you have a team like Colorado only scoring 26 goals for the season as the conference low, and a high from St. Louis was 62. But the big question is, did the defense improve under Luchi? Well, the team ended with 43 goals conceded, which is only 62.31% of the goals conceded from the previous season. That's almost half. Also puts us below the conference average for this season of 47.71 goals. The high was Portland with 58, and the low was the Seattle Sounders with 32, which, by the way, we beat twice this year. That is also an average of 1.26 goals conceded per game in 2023 compared to 2.03 goals conceded in 22. Again, almost half. Yes, I understand that less goals were scored, but that's because we gained a system and a shape under Luchi Gonzalez, and an effective one at that. In that system and defense, it caused our whole team, especially our forwards, to come back and drop and hold a shape. You can even see this from PFF_CC on Twitter that posted that Christian Espinoza and Jeremy Ebobisse were leading the league in forwards distance covered as of September 15th. Look, it's all fine and dandy what I think the logical reasoning for the approach for the next season would be. Let's see what Luchi Gonzalez thought the goals for the season should be. And by the way, when you go into an interview, you kind of need to tell them what you think the goals are before they hire you, and they see if it matches up. So let's see what the club as a whole thought the goals should be.
But the ambition is to win, is to make the playoffs next year. Plain and simple. We must make the playoffs next year. That's going to be our mentality, our objective. But you know, the process is the most important for me. The steps and the process and how you get there, and how you play on the field, and how you develop the team and build that roster. That's where, you know, that's where the work's got to be done. That's where everybody's got to believe. Fans,
Well, as we can see, he did make the playoffs, and for the first half of the season was looking at a home game for the playoffs. Even if it turned out to be a play-in game, that is playoffs. And yes, I know what you're gonna say, there was a major drop-off after 11 games and after the League's Cup, but again, we will come to that later. Another big thing he says, there needs to be a process. We're not just getting random wins. There's gotta be a process. Obviously, that's not verbatim what he just said. So, let's see if there was a process. In 2023, Luchi's biggest loss streak was 2 games on 3 separate occasions. In 2022, the Earthquakes' biggest loss streak was 2 games on 3 separate occasions. In 2023, the biggest winless streak was 5 games on 2 separate occasions. In 2022, the biggest winless streak was 7 games,
as well as a 6-game and a few 4-game streaks.
That may not sound too different, but it really is. In 2022, we saw a game that with a 6-0 loss, a 4-1 loss, and 12 games, 12, with 3 or more goals scored for either team in a soccer game. In 2023, however, we did see a 4-1 loss.
And only an additional 5 games with 3 or more goals scored.
That sounds like a process of a lot more consistency to me personally. As well as going from a 2022 record of 8-11-15 to a 2023 record of 10-14-10. Also, by the way, in 2023, the Earthquakes led the league in most goals conceded in the 80th and 90th minute. So, let's hypothetically pretend 80 minutes of really solid work and really solid defense is not cool in your first year with the team. Let's just pretend, especially compared to last year where we weren't seeing as many clean sheets or low scoring games. Let's say we had a more refined team. Maybe one that is in its 2nd year of development under a coach. And here are all the games in which we conceded in the 80th minute or later. Psst, by the way, all of you that want to mention the League's Cup drop-off, every single one of these games happened beforehand. So let's just say we got all these points back somehow in what was one of the most tightly contested Western Conferences this year. We would leapfrog to 2nd place in the league, LAFC would drop to 6th, FC Dallas would drop to 9th, and every respective team would drop down 1 more spot. But unfortunately in sports, that's just not how it works, including the 4 goals that we scored in the 80th minute or later this year. That's just how the game plays sometimes. But hey, if you took the team that was 2nd worst in defense last year and were able to make them really good at defending for 80 of the 90 minutes, as well as make them make the playoffs for the 3rd time in the last 10 years, even if it was via play-in, I think you would be pretty happy with the job you did. I think you would also be saying, wow, if we just tweaked a few things and locked in for a few more minutes, we would have been one of the top teams in the league. This doesn't even mention the games where we conceded early. Now I want to bring us back to 2 earlier points that were made. 1, the coaching change, and 2, the drop in quality after 11-ish games. First off, I personally want to thank Alex Cavello, who took an impossible task as an interim coach in an extremely, just seriously again, impossible scenario, and he made the most of it. He brought life to a team that looked like it was left in the mud. He brought joy. He brought us a win for the first time in, I think it was 9 games that season. His job and the staff and everything they did were absolutely phenomenal. And I'm speaking from firsthand experience of going to almost every single home game in 2022, getting to talk to Cavello and staff and seeing how passionate they were for the club, how much they worked, seeing those long nights they would come out, sometimes past midnight after games, and just seeing, yes, I know the record is where we want it to be, but considering everything that happened, doing the phenomenal job. And a lot of these guys are still in the club, whether it be Alex with coach of methodology, or some that went to be assistant coaches or coaches for academies in the youth team. And I wish them nothing but success. And again, thank them for their time. This is not a critique on them. They did a phenomenal job. They almost single-handedly kept the ship afloat when there were some giant holes in the boat. The second point is the drop-off in games around game 11, as well as the League Cup. Let's just start with the League Cup. The boys stopped playing for around 3.5 weeks. It's not really a shock to me that they came back and were a little bit rusty. On paper, how this squad did and who our personnel is and how we started at the beginning of the season should have ended better. That's the problem. We're comparing it to the beginning of the season. And we're not comparing to last season and the previous season's results and knowing that we still have most of that foundational core still left, and to see what a leapfrog from last in the conference to a playoff spot. That's a massive improvement. Yes, I agree, we could have done better, and on paper, maybe we probably should have. That's not what I'm arguing here. I'm arguing that there's a different reason, and it's not because of Luchi's bad or timid coaching. He's a phenomenal coach, and I'm trying to prove that here. We could just maybe sit back and appreciate the work of Luchi, and maybe let him cook for a little bit. But now to the game 11 drop-off. For the first 11 games, Earthquakes look like one of the best teams in the league. They changed from their Almeida man-marking system to a zonal 4-4-2 or at times 4-5-1 defense, which, as discussed earlier, yes, dropped the goal count, but also drastically dropped the goals conceded. This also saw a very high press and trap system that has playing high-octane ball on both ends of the pitch. Similar to what made us successful last year, except this time, we're able to cover our own butts. And honestly, I think with a mixture of squad depth, injuries, international break, and just overall timing of how everything panned out, it just wasn't sustainable for our squad. But why are other teams, such as the 2023 champions Columbus Crew, able to do the exact same thing? I mean, they had one of our academy players, Max Arston, and we took their captain, Jonathan Mensah. The personnel could be similar enough in that respect. Was it Luchi's fault? No. It's San Jose's. We just don't know how to win. Yes, we brought a few winners into the locker room. The team, the foundation, the staff, the fans, we just aren't used to winning. In fact, we have a history of losing, and sometimes losing pretty badly. Our last 9 seasons in the West: 2023, 9th, 2022, 14th, 2021, 10th, 2020, 8th, 2019, 8th, 2018, 12th, 2017, 6th, 2016, 9th, 2015, 7th. By the way, a lot of teams have been added to the league over this time. In only one of those seasons were we in the top half of the conference and never a top half of the playoffs. Twice have we ever made the playoffs prior to Luchi. Not to mention how many of those seasons we were near or bottom of the table. That's serious pressure, and that's just not knowing how to win. This is not me insulting the Earthquakes or trying to get at the franchise. It's just explain what happened in the 2023 season. If you and your friends had a task of picking up a box, walking 10 steps, and then putting it down, but every single time you got to the 8th step, you tripped and fell over, you would begin to become self-conscious, especially if you see your friends doing it. Maybe they make comments. Maybe you have to hear from random people who aren't even doing it. You hear their comments. Then you start thinking on your 6th and 7th step, oh my God, here comes step 8. How am I gonna get past step 8? How am I gonna get past step 8? Versus, okay, here's 6, here's 7, here's 8, 9, 10. Now you may think this is some crazy unsupported claim that I just made to make sense, and it's not really that applicable to professional sports. For that, you would be right. So, here's a study from Worthy, Markman, and Maddox from the University of Texas, published to the International Journal of Creativity and Problem Solving. They pretty much wanted to see the psychology that if trying to avoid a negative outcome and trying to attain a positive outcome have different effects on performance, such as free throws in an NBA game when ahead or behind in a clutch situation. They looked at every single game from the 2003 to 2006 season in the NBA and examined every single free throw shot by a player in the final minutes of a game when a team were within 5 points of each other. The results basically came out to when behind there was a lot more what was quoted as choking, but they did see that players would succeed more when tied or already ahead and become more clutch. This then opened their discussion of winning versus trying not to lose. Now, one of the biggest things in research and scientific data that I do want to state for the viewers at home is that correlation does not mean causation. And some of you may still be looking at all this information and be saying, well, you found a singular piece of evidence or a few that really go and support your claim. It's so much different in a professional soccer locker room, especially for the San Jose Earthquakes. You don't know what it's like in there. And again, I totally agree with you. So here's my 2023 interview with Captain Jackson Ewell with about 2 games left in the season when I asked, how do you keep the guys going when you're losing a lot?
Yeah, it's challenging, because I think you kind of get into this, almost this loop of, oh, it's going to happen again. If you're up a goal and then it's like, oh, they're going to come back because, we just can't find a way to win.
So this kind of makes you think, are the Quakes subconsciously trying to win or not lose? Of course, I think they're trying to win. I think they're trying really hard. I think they're trying a lot harder than people are giving them credit for, and a lot more than people will ever know about the professional soccer world. But I think psychologically there might be a factor we are not also accommodating. So we have seen much of the evidence for and against my client today, some of which showing you where we were last season, how we compare now, goals and promises my client has reached, as well as studies and first-hand interviews showing psychological factors. And while I think they already shown enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt against the slander, I now present my closing argument. The truth of the matter is, I can dig up all the stats in the world and I can present them in my favor, but this doesn't tell the full story. This does not show the electricity through the stadium in 2023. This does not show the level of hope, promise, joy, glee that was filled through Earthquakes fans at the beginning when we started to see this new style of play. through Luchi Gonzalez. And honestly, so many unnamed heroes throughout the staff for probably the past few years. This doesn't show the away game trips, the sacrifices they make, the highs and the lows, all the time they spend, the early mornings they get there, and the late nights. I can say one thing certain, without a doubt, cannot be discussed at all. Luchi Gonzalez is not going into these games trying to lose. And I'm pretty sure he's going his darndest to really make sure he can win. Him, the players, and so many unnamed heroes go relentlessly into each match to study, to learn tactics, and to try to apply them so that we can win each Saturday. As fans, we stick with them through the thick and the thin, because we're the fans of the team. Some of us, even when Luchi was drafted to the Earthquakes back in the early 2000s. And I know we're not only tired of losing, but we're tired of losing badly. But Luchi does care about this job, and he is so knowledgeable. I've also had the honor of getting to speak to Luchi and see how he works. He cares so much for this club. I once asked him a question after a game where the results didn't quite go in our favor. And I asked him kind of a hard-hitting question about coaching. And while I was expecting a really quick response, or maybe just to be completely blown off, he sat there and explained to me for 10 minutes minimum exactly everything I want to know and really make sure to help that I know. Not condescending, not rude, but just purely wanting to help. Mind you, this was close to midnight when he was doing this. We all love this club, and we all have been waiting for this long-awaited success. So let's go out there and let's make the home games the most electric in the whole MLS. Let's make away teams scared to come. Let's support our staff. Let's support our players. Let the players know if they have a bad game, all it is one bad game, and we still got their backs the way they still got ours. Make the other team scared to come and play against us. And after they leave, let them know. That's what's shaking.